to get on or get off the coal branch. At last, our vacation time would arrive. During the summer, the CNR would put on excursion fares at reduced rates. On these excursions, we would have a return trip to the coast. My family always traveled directly to Vancouver by rail, with the exception of one trip when we went by rail to Prince Rupert and then by boat to Vancouver. On this particular trip, our train rolled into Prince Rupert, along with thick fog that obscured the city from our view. Although disappointed at not actually seeing the port, the boat trip to Vancouver was an adventure, as we kept watch of the competitors' ships. The CNR ship we were on had its name preceded by Prince, while the CPR ships were entitled Princess. Our typical holiday of going out onto the coast and coming home by rail was an adventure in itself. We would leave home on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday morning, as the Blue Flea went on about those days and returned on Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. The train took a day and a half to go about 65 miles. It would go about 30 miles to Coalspur and stop there for over an hour while the locomotive shunted and added 15 or more boxcars of coal to our train. The men would head over to the beer parlor, and the women and children would head to the cafe for soup and sandwiches. When the train was ready to depart, the conductor, Mr. A.J. McAvoy, would come over and call, "All aboard!" The train would then give a few blasts of the whistle, and after leaving Coalspur, we would go through the tunnel just before Robb, the only tunnel on the Coal Branch line. After making all the sundry stops, it joined the main line at Birkendyke. Then it was on to the Big Eddy, a very big trestle built with timbers, the last landmark before Edson. The westbound transcontinentals passed through Edson before noon each day, forcing us to stay overnight in the Edson Hotel. It was the only one when traveling westbound that was required to stay overnight. What proved a pain in the neck for Mom and Dad was pure excitement for Don and me. Mom and Dad reserved a room in the front of the Edson Hotel for us where we could sit at the windows and watch the freight trains and the eastbound Continentals going through town. The yard engines shunting and pushing cars up the ramp and filling the hoppers up with coal to load the tenders on locomotives provided hours of entertainment. As our room faced the main street and all the bars, Mother diligently used to check up on us to make sure we were asleep before the beer parlors closed. After a number of trips, we learned to pretend we were sleeping, and when Mom went back to her room, we would get up and watch the bars empty out. If we were lucky, there would be a fight, but most of the time, it would just be loud talk. In those days, they had a bar for the men and a bar for the women. It was against the law for men and women to drink together. When talking about it later, I remarked, "It's like the washrooms, his and hers." The reply was, "No, it's just that men like to drink, tell stories, and talk things over with each other. If they let ladies in, they wouldn't get a word in edgewise." Talk about sexist. After a late night, morning came quickly as we set out to have breakfast in the hotel restaurant. I still savor the flavor in my mind of cornflakes served with real cream. Everything seems more vivid in a child's mind. With breakfast completed, we would sign out of the hotel and make our way to the station. Impatiently, we watched the railway lines for the number 1 train to arrive. Number 1 and number 3 trains ran east to west, and number 2 and number 4 trains ran west to east at intervals of 1 hour apart. Donnie and I imagined we were spied the number 1 coming down the line at least 3 or 4 times before it actually happened. The long passenger train with its baggage cars, day cars, Pullman or sleeper cars, then the diner and observation car was an impressive sight. This train had a smoky who would walk through the coaches selling cigarettes, aromatic coffee, chocolate bars, bottles of pop, and sandwiches. Traveling at speeds to top our beloved Blue Flea, this train stopped briefly at places like Jasper Station, Blue River, North Kamloops Junction, and Boston Bar, just long enough for passengers to get a bowl of soup and a sandwich. Further stops and slowdowns occurred for passengers to take pictures of Mount Robson, whose summit was generally steeped in clouds, and of the majestic Pyramid Falls. When we finally saw the bridge at New Westminster and the Royal City Cannery, we knew we had arrived. Vancouver was alien and exciting to my brother and me. We would usually stay with Aunt Lizzie, Dick Brown's sister, who had a boarding house in the West End. Her home, being in the heart of Vancouver, placed us in the center of city life and activity. We would wake up to the hoofbeat of the milk wagon horse. The horse went from one customer's house to the next without a command, inspiring awe in our young minds. The ice cart came next with ice for the icebox, as refrigeration was a luxury that few could afford. The bakery also had a horse-drawn cart. As the hoofbeats faded, one could hear in the distance the zing and drone of a streetcar starting to move. To our little ears, they were strange, exotic sounds. Fresh milk topped with thick cream was another delightful city experience. What amazed us is that we could drink all we wanted. Catamount had a small dairy, but we were brought up on canned milk either due to the high cost of fresh milk or to the fact that we had no refrigeration. It wasn't until after World War II that my brother Don bought our first brand new refrigerator for over $500 from a local businessman, Pete McKenna. Until then, fresh milk was a real treat. Vancouver's beaches and pools provided another holiday thrill. In Cadomin, the water was so cold one could immediately turn blue and start to go numb when entering it. Vancouver's moderate climate was balmy by comparison. Our holidays always ended too soon for us, but not too soon for our sunburns. To add to our sunburn pain, the passenger cars on the train had mohair upholstered seats. What pain one's clothes did not inflict upon one's sunburn, the mohair did. The skin on our arms and backs peeled for days after we got home, leaving us with a reminder of our sunny Vancouver holiday. Before Cadomin was a reality, one had to go through the Blue Flea Edson ordeal. Going home always seemed to take twice as long as it took to get to the coast. 10 to 20 coal cars preceded the passenger trains. Clickety-click, clickety-click. The train moved so slowly that some of the young bucks would get off of the front passenger car, pick tiger lilies, and then get back onto the second car. The train would again stop at Coalspur, release some of its boxcars, blow its whistle to call all aboard, and then continue on its journey. Apart from calling passengers aboard, the only other time the whistle would blow was to warn Jack the Frog that the RCMP were aboard with their dogs to search for his still. Even without the additional weight of the boxcars, our progress was slow and laborious. Gradually, the station at Mercole came into view, forewarning us that our stop at Leland was next. We disembarked at Leland, as it was easier to get home from there than it was to continue on the rail to Cadomin. The train would move on to Luscar and then back to Leland before heading up the line to the Cadomin station, where it was proceeded to its final destination, Mountain Park, the end of Steel.